The stars around him had stopped moving days ago. Commander Zelthar floated in the dark bridge of his ruined ship, staring at the endless black beyond the window. His ship, the valiant Spear, once proud and shining with the colors of the Karen Empire, now drifted powerless through deep space. The engines were dead. The life support systems were fading. Every few minutes a light flickered, then went out. He was alone. The silence was heavy. It was the kind of silence that made a person start to hear their own heartbeat. The kind that made the air feel colder than it really was. Zelthar sat back in his command chair, his breathing slow and forced. The oxygen level on the control screen showed less than 20%. That meant only a few hours left. Maybe less. He had already sent the distress signal days ago, maybe weeks. Time didn't feel real anymore. No one had answered. No one was coming. Not that he expected anyone to. The Karen Empire didn't rescue those who failed. His ship had been ambushed during a border patrol mission, attacked by pirates using strange human-made technology. He had fought hard, but the pirates were fast, clever, and ruthless. When the last of his crew died and the engines burned out, Zelthar knew what his empire would say. A true Karen warrior accepts his fate. He had accepted it. At least he thought he had. But when the lights began to fail and the cold crept into the air, a different voice whispered inside him. The small, stubborn voice that didn't want to die alone in the dark. He tried to focus on something, anything, to push away the thought. He opened the ship's log recorder and spoke softly, his voice dry and tired. Final report. Commander Zelthar of the Karen Imperial Fleet. Ship designation, Valiant Spear. Crew, deceased. Engines, destroyed. Coordinates, unknown. If anyone finds this message, tell my family I served with honor. He paused. His throat tightened. Tell them I didn't run. He ended the recording and sat in silence again. The hum of the emergency systems was growing weaker. Even the air recycler was slowing. Soon it would stop. He could already feel the air growing thinner. He looked out at the stars. They were cold, endless, and beautiful, but they didn't care. No one out here cared. Then suddenly a faint sound, a crackle of static. Zelthar frowned. It had been so long since he'd heard anything that it didn't even sound real at first. He leaned closer to the communications console, eyes narrowing. The static came again, and this time underneath it a voice. Identified vessel, this is the United Human Ship Resolute. We are receiving your distress signal. Repeat, this is the UHS Resolute. Do you copy? Zelthar froze. A human ship? That couldn't be right. Humans didn't come this far into space. They didn't have the range, the technology, the nerve. His mind rejected it instantly. It must be a trick, a pirate trap, or a false signal. He slammed a clawed hand onto the console. Identify yourself, he shouted. His voice cracked from the dryness of the air. There was a pause, then the same calm voice came again, clearer now. It was female, confident. This is Captain Elena Hayes of the UHS Resolute. We detected your beacon during patrol. We're en route to your position. Hold tight, Commander. He didn't know what to say. His mind raced. How could humans know his rank? How could they even understand his frequency? His people barely shared words with humans, and when they did, it was usually through threats or warnings. You will not reach me in time, Zelthar replied coldly. My ship is beyond repair. My air is nearly gone. Leave this sector. Negative, came the firm reply. We don't leave anyone behind. Those words echoed in his mind long after the signal faded. He leaned back, staring at the ceiling. The idea was ridiculous. Humans didn't risk their lives for strangers, especially not for enemies. They were opportunists, scavengers, always looking for profit or territory. That's what the Empire taught him. That's what everyone believed. Yet here they were, coming for him. Hours passed. The lights continued to dim. The temperature dropped again. The only thing keeping him awake was the slow, steady beeping of his heartbeat monitor. Every time it slowed, he slapped the side of the chair to stay alert. And then, a faint glow appeared through the viewport. A single beam of light. Cutting through the void, the human ship. He could hardly believe it. The Resolute moved with purpose, its hull shining silver under the starlight. It wasn't large, maybe half the size of his cruiser, but it carried itself like something alive. His sensors flickered weakly, showing life signs aboard, dozens of humans working together, moving fast. He whispered to himself, almost in disbelief. They actually came. The radio crackled again. "Commander Zelthar, we have visual contact." "Prepare for boarding," he laughed weakly. A dry, bitter laugh that turned into a cough. "Boarding? You think you can breach a Karen warship in this state?" "We'll find a way," the human captain said, her voice steady. "Just stay alive." The last thing Zelthar saw before losing consciousness was the bright white light of the approaching human shuttle, cutting through the darkness like a promise he didn't know he needed. When Zelthar woke, everything felt wrong. His vision was blurry, his chest ached, and the air around him smelled strange, too clean, too soft. The cold metal of his command chair was gone. He was lying on a padded surface covered with a thin blanket. Above him, white lights hummed quietly. He blinked, trying to focus. The walls were smooth, curved, and silver gray, not Karen design. The symbols on the console nearby were unfamiliar. Then he saw it. A small flag stitched into the corner of the blanket, a blue globe surrounded by stars, the human insignia. His heart skipped. They had really done it. The humans had found him. They had brought him aboard. He pushed himself up with a groan, his muscles weak from dehydration. A strange humming sound pulsed through the air, the rhythm of a ship alive and moving. He realized he was inside a medical bay. Machines beeped softly. Oxygen hissed from a vent. And across the room stood a human. The woman was tall, dressed in a gray uniform with a black stripe down one arm. Her dark hair was tied back, her face calm but watchful. Her eyes, however, held something sharp, not fear, but calculation. "Good," she said, noticing he was awake. "You're tougher than you look." Her voice matched the one from the transmission. Captain Elena Hayes, Doc Zelthar, sat up straighter, trying not to show weakness. "You are human." "That's right," she said simply. "Captain Hayes, UHS Resolute." He looked around again, trying to understand why he was still alive. "Why did you bring me here?" he asked slowly. "My species is not friendly to yours." Hayes crossed her arms. "Because your beacon was still active. We answered distress calls. Doesn't matter who you are." Her answer made no sense to him. "Even if it means risking your own crew?" She shrugged. "It's what we do." He stared at her, unable to decide if she was lying or simply insane. Before he could reply, the door opened and two more humans entered, one male, one female. The man wore a light exosuit, his sleeves rolled up. His hands were covered in grease and burns, and he smelled faintly of engine coolant. "Captain," he said, nodding. "Main reactor's stable again. We're running at half power." "Good work, Torres," Hayes said. "This is our guest." Torres turned to Zelthar and smiled. "Didn't think we'd find anyone alive in that wreck." "Tough guy, huh?" Zelthar didn't know how to react to the casual tone. Among the Karen, no one spoke to an officer that way. Respect was everything. Yet these humans treated rank like an afterthought. He tried to speak with authority. "Your people should have left me." "The Karen Empire does not accept—" Yeah, Torres interrupted, waving a hand. "You're welcome anyway." He grinned and left the room before Zelthar could reply. Hayes gave a small, amused smile. "You'll get used to him." "Humans have no discipline," Zelthar muttered. "Maybe," she said softly. "But we get things done." He turned away, pretending to study the wall, but his mind was storming. Everything about them was wrong. Their casualness, their warmth, their refusal to follow hierarchy. Yet their ship, though smaller and rougher than a Karen vessel, was functional, efficient, alive with purpose. Hours passed. He was given food, warm, simple, but filling. A clear liquid that burned slightly going down. Water, they called it. They didn't even charge him for it. Later, Hayes returned and stood near his bed. "Your ship's core is too damaged for tow." "We'll salvage what we can, but the hull's a lost cause." He nodded grimly. "So you mean to keep me prisoner?" "Not a prisoner," she said. "A guest. At least until we reach a friendly port. He narrowed his eyes. "And what do humans want in return?" Hayes gave him a tired look, then said quietly, "Nothing." That word hit him harder than he expected. In his culture, nothing was a lie. There was always a deal, always a favor owed. Yet when he looked into her eyes, he saw no trick, only exhaustion and sincerity. Before she left, she paused at the door. "You should rest. You're safe here. Safe?" he repeated, half in disbelief. "On a human ship?" She gave a small smile. "Safer than you were out there." Then she was gone. For a long time, Zelthar sat in silence, staring at the stars beyond the window. The human ship cut smoothly through the void, engines glowing faint blue. He could see crew members walking through the hallways beyond the glass, laughing, working, helping one another. No guards. No fear, just trust. It was strange. It was dangerous. It was human. It was strange. It was dangerous. It was human. He closed his eyes and tried to rest, but his mind would not stop turning. He thought about the crew of the Valiant Spear, proud, cold, loyal to the Empire, but never to each other. Would they have done what these humans did? Would he have? When he drifted to sleep, he dreamed of light cutting through darkness, a human hand reaching out across the stars. Commander Zelthar awoke the next morning to the hum of human engines. The Resolute moved smoothly through the void, its systems steady and alive. It was the sound of a ship that trusted itself, a sound he had missed. He stood by the wide observation window of the crew deck. Below, a gas giant glowed in gold and orange, its rings glittering like frozen fire. For a moment, he almost forgot he was standing among humans. Almost. Then he heard laughter. Two crew members floated near the window, tossing a small metallic sphere between them, some kind of zero-gravity game. They laughed when one missed, sending the ball bouncing off the wall. It was a sound Zelthar hadn't heard in years. Laughter without fear, without purpose. To him, it was strange. To them, it was life. A voice spoke from behind him. "Beautiful, isn't it?" He turned. Captain Elena Hayes stood with her arms crossed, still in her gray uniform, a faint smudge of oil on her cheek. She didn't look like a commander. She looked like someone who worked beside her crew, not above them. Zelthar's voice was careful. "Your people seem undisciplined." She raised an eyebrow. "You mean happy?" He frowned. "On a Karen vessel, there is no time for this." "Play. That's the difference," Hayes said. "You fight to prove your strength. We fight to make sure everyone comes home." The words landed like a soft blow. He turned back to the window, unsure how to respond. Later in the mess hall, he found himself surrounded by humans. The room was filled with voices, the clatter of metal trays, and the faint hiss of machinery. The smell of cooked food was thick and heavy, real food, not ration gel. He sat at a table near the corner, observing. A young woman offered him a plate. "Try this," she said with a smile. "Protein loaf. Don't worry, no meat. Not sure if your kind eats that." He hesitated. Karen warriors didn't accept food from others. It was a sign of weakness, but his stomach growled, betraying him. He took the plate, slicing the loaf carefully with his claws. The taste was odd, but warm. The humans around him didn't seem to care that he was an alien. They joked, argued, traded stories. One even asked him about his homeworld, genuinely curious. Zelthar didn't know how to answer. No one ever asked a Karen officer personal questions. "It is cold," he said finally. "Efficient, orderly." "Sounds boring," said a man across from him with a grin. Zelthar glared. "It is strong." "Yeah," the man said. "But strength isn't everything." The casual tone made Zelthar's claws twitch. Among his people, such words could mean a duel. But here, the crew just kept eating, smiling, alive in their own rhythm. He didn't understand them, yet something inside him whispered that maybe he wanted to. Days passed. He began to move freely around the ship, watched by curious but friendly eyes. The humans worked like a swarm. Engineers fixing leaks, pilots monitoring routes, medics checking supplies. No one shouted. No one struck fear, but the ship ran perfectly. Zelthar found himself studying their methods. On Karen's ships, orders came from above, absolute and unquestioned. Here, ideas bounced from person to person, changing shape as they passed. Somehow it worked. Faster, more creative, more alive. One evening, he watched from the hangar deck as the crew repaired one of the small shuttles. Sparks danced as welders worked under the dim lights. A young human mechanic named Rios looked up and grinned. "You ever fix ships, Commander?" Zelthar shook his head. "That is the work of the labor class." "Here," Rios said, tossing him a small tool. "It's the work of whoever's closest." Zelthar caught it out of instinct. He stared at the tool in his hand, then at the human, who had already turned back to his work, expecting no argument. He surprised himself by helping. At first it was clumsy. The human tools were strange, the materials softer than what he was used to. But soon his claws moved with precision. Metal sealed against metal, circuits aligned. When they powered up the shuttle and the lights flickered to life, the crew cheered. Someone clapped him on the shoulder. "Not bad, big guy." He froze. No Karen subordinate would ever dare touch a commander. But this wasn't disrespect, it was connection. He didn't know what to say, so he simply nodded. That night, in his quarters, Zelthar stared at his reflection in the polished metal wall. His once sharp armor plates were scuffed. His uniform was gone, replaced by simple clothes the humans had given him. He should have felt humiliated. Instead, he felt lighter. He remembered the sound of their laughter, the warmth of their food, the way they treated one another as equals. He remembered Captain Hayes saying, "We fight to make sure everyone comes home." He whispered to himself, as if testing the words, "together." Stronger, he didn't yet understand humanity, but for the first time in his life he wanted to. Outside his window, the Resolute glided through a field of distant stars. Unknown space, unknown dangers. Yet somehow Zelthar felt safer here than he ever had among his own kind, and far away. Beyond the edge of known space, something unseen was already watching, waiting for the next encounter that would test what it truly meant to be human. The alarms began as a distant hum, soft, rhythmic, like the heartbeat of a nervous god. Commander Zelthar was in the hangar, studying the ship's repair logs when the sound changed. It deepened into a siren, echoing through the metal corridors. Red light flashed across the walls. The calm hum of the Resolute turned into a growl. A voice came over the comm system. "Attention, crew, this is the captain. We're entering a Class 7 ion storm. Secure all decks and prepare for turbulence." Zelthar straightened immediately. He had heard of such storms, violent fields of charged energy that shredded unshielded ships. The Karen Empire avoided them at all costs, but the humans weren't turning away. He made his way to the bridge, his long steps steady even as the floor began to shake. When he arrived, the crew was already in motion. Every console was lit, every human focused but calm. Captain Hayes stood in the center, her hands clasped behind her back, her voice sharp and clear. "Helm, compensate for drift. Engineering, reroute power to shields. Science, give me a storm map now." Lightning-like bursts of blue energy flashed outside the viewport. The Resolute trembled but held. "Captain," Zelthar said, moving beside her, "you cannot pass through this storm. It will tear your vessel apart." Hayes didn't look at him. "We don't have a choice. The long way around adds 3 days, and we've got wounded who need medical stations." He frowned. 3 days is survival. "This is suicide." She finally turned to him, her eyes hard. "You think I don't know the odds? You're welcome to the escape pod if you'd rather wait it out." Her tone wasn't mocking, it was sincere. A real choice. Zelthar's pride flared, but so did something else. A strange heat in his chest, not anger, but respect. He stayed. Minutes later, the storm struck. The ship shook violently. The lights dimmed, flickered, then returned. Arcs of plasma crackled along the hull. Outside, the sky boiled with electric clouds. Every breath tasted like metal. "Shields at 60%, shouted the tactical officer. "Divert auxiliary," Hayes ordered. "Keep us alive, people." Then came a second alarm, sharper, urgent. The sensor officer's eyes widened. Multiple contacts emerging from the storm. Not ion debris, they're ships. Zelthar's blood ran cold. "Pirates," Hayes cursed under her breath. "They're using the storm to hide their approach." Through the static haze of the storm, faint shapes appeared, black darting vessels with ragged wings. Zelthar recognized their design immediately. Void Reavers, he said grimly. Scavengers. They strike crippled ships and drain their power cores. Not today, Hayes said. The bridge roared to life. Turrets locked on, the gunners shouted coordinates, and the ship's cannons blazed. Energy bolts cut through the storm like blue spears, but visibility was poor. The raiders swarmed like shadows, firing plasma bursts that tore through the Resolute's outer hull. Zelthar felt something stir inside him. The instinct of a warrior, long buried under failure and pride. He moved to a side console, fingers flying over the controls. Your targeting algorithms are too slow in interference, he said quickly. Your ship's sensors read energy signatures, yes? Combine them with magnetic distortion readings. You'll see them before they fire, the tactical officer blinked. How do you... Just do it! Hayes nodded. Follow his lead! Seconds later, the system recalibrated. The radar screen came alive. The pirate ships flared like ghosts revealed in lightning. Targets acquired, shouted the gunner. Then hit them! Hayes ordered. The Resolute fired. Explosions bloomed across the storm like fireflowers. 2 pirate ships disintegrated instantly. The others veered off, circling for another pass. The crew cheered, and Zelthar felt something unexpected. Pride, not for himself, but for them. But the storm wasn't done. A surge of lightning struck the Resolute's hull. The ship lurched hard. Sparks flew from the ceiling. The lights flickered and died for a moment. Main power offline, yelled engineering. We're running on emergency batteries. Get me auxiliary thrusters, Hayes shouted. Get me auxiliary thrusters, Hayes shouted. Zelthar grabbed the railing, his claws digging into metal. The ship spun slightly, drifting toward the storm's vortex, a swirling tunnel of electric fury. If they fell into it, they'd be torn apart. He looked at the humans, the way they worked together even as death closed in. No fear, just focus. Every voice called out data, solutions, updates. They didn't freeze. They didn't surrender. He felt something shift deep inside him. Captain, he said, you will not make it on batteries alone. Got any better ideas? She snapped. Yes. He moved to the control panel, overriding a system. Your ship's hull is coated with reactive plating, yes? It can conduct energy. Conduct? It'll fry us. Unless we channel it. His claws danced across the controls. Let the storm power you. Her eyes widened. You're insane. He looked back, a sharp grin forming. So are humans. For a tense moment, she hesitated. Then she smiled, just a little. Do it. The plan was madness, but it worked. When the next lightning strike hit, the energy coursed through the hull, and instead of frying the systems, it surged into the engines. The ship roared to life, burning bright against the storm. The pirates didn't understand what they were seeing. The Resolute charged forward, weapons blazing. One by one, the raiders vanished into fire. When the storm finally cleared, silence filled the bridge. Only the hum of living systems remained. Hayes looked around, then turned to Zelthar. Remind me never to doubt you again. He nodded slowly, his voice low. Remind me never to doubt humans again. The two stood there in the quiet glow of the bridge. Stars shining beyond the window, battered, exhausted, but alive. And for the first time in his life, Zelthar didn't feel like an outsider. He felt like part of a crew. The Resolute drifted in silence. The storm had passed, but it had left deep scars. Burned hull plating, flickering lights. The hum of engines that now sounded more like groans than songs. The crew moved through the corridors with quiet purpose. Every face was tired, every movement heavy, but they were alive. And that, on a ship this damaged, was a victory. Commander Zelthar walked the halls slowly, his claws clinking against the metal floor. He had seen the damage himself, melted conduits, cracked pipes, and power lines hanging like vines. Yet the humans didn't complain. They didn't curse their luck or their captain. They just worked together. He had never seen such unity. In the Karen Empire, after a battle like this, survivors would turn on one another. Blame would fly faster than debris. But these humans joked, laughed, and carried tools instead of grudges. They were strange. In the engine room, the air was thick with heat and the smell of burning ozone. Engineers shouted over the roar of machinery. Among them was Chief Engineer Isaac Ward, a broad-shouldered man with oil-streaked skin and a permanent grin. "Pressure valves slipping again," he yelled. "Someone hold that seal!" Zelthar watched from the doorway. Isaac moved like a storm himself, one hand on a wrench, the other punching commands into a console. The crew followed his lead without question. He noticed Zelthar and called out, "Hey, Commander, you feel like saving our butts again?" Zelthar blinked. "Explain." Isaac pointed to a glowing vent where plasma gas hissed dangerously. "The regulator's shot. If we don't stabilize it, the reactor overheats and we all go supernova. And your captain allows this. Chaos?" Isaac laughed. "It's not chaos, it's Tuesday." The alien tilted his head. "I do not know this." "Tuesday, you'll learn," Isaac said with a wink. For the next hour, they worked side by side. Zelthar's precision met Isaac's improvisation. Together, they replaced a damaged cooling line and rerouted energy from the backup coils. It was dangerous work. One mistake and the engine could detonate. Sweat rolled down Isaac's face, but he never slowed. "Almost there," he muttered, tightening the last bolt. "Just need to vent the plasma before it—" A loud alarm cut through the air. Red lights flashed again. "Warning," the ship's computer announced. "Reactor containment breach in progress." The room went silent. Everyone froze. Zelthar's eyes darted to the readouts. The pressure was rising too fast. "The main vent is jammed," he shouted. "The buildup will rupture the core." Isaac's face hardened. "Manual override, then." He ran toward the airlock that led to the reactor tunnel. The crew shouted after him. "Isaac, wait! The radiation level's lethal." He turned back, smiling faintly. "Yeah, I know." Before anyone could stop him, he slammed his hand on the emergency seal, locking the door behind him. "Ward." Hayes' voice came over the comms. "Stand down. That's an order." But the only reply was static. And then Isaac's calm voice. "Captain, with all due respect, orders don't mean much if we're all vaporized." Through the viewing window, Zelthar saw the human moving through the reactor tunnel. The light there was blinding. The plasma glow painted his figure in fire. He moved slowly, dragging a heavy control rod into place, each step a battle against the heat. "Radiation levels rising," the computer warned. The bridge called out over comms. "We can't stop him! If he doesn't vent now, the ship." But then the warning stopped. The numbers on the screen froze, then began to fall. Pressure dropping, temperature stabilizing. The reactor's pulse returned to normal. The danger was over, but Isaac didn't come back. For a long time, no one spoke. The only sound was the low hum of the engines, the sound of survival paid for in full. When the door finally opened, they found his suit empty, lying just inside the airlock. His name tag, I. Ward, was burned but still legible. Captain Hayes stood over it, her jaw tight, her eyes shining. She didn't cry. Humans rarely did in front of others, but her voice trembled as she whispered, "He kept the lights on." The crew gathered in silence. Even Zelthar bowed his head. To the Karen, death was glory. But this was something else. This was love. Later that night, Zelthar sat alone in the observation bay. The stars outside looked colder now. He replayed Isaac's final moments in his mind. Not as a warrior's death, but as a human's choice. A man who could have lived but didn't, because others still could. No Karen commander would have done that. Not for strangers, not for crew, not for anyone. He thought of the way Isaac had smiled, fearless, certain, selfless. He whispered into the quiet, "You died. Not for empire, not for honor, but for them." His claws tapped the metal floor as he spoke to himself, the words heavy but sure. If humanity fights like this, then they are not weak. They are unstoppable. The Resolute continued its journey through the stars, one crew member fewer but somehow stronger than before. And in his heart, Commander Zelthar made a silent promise. The next time death came for this ship, he would not stand by and watch. The stars looked sharper now. colder. Commander Zelthar stood on the bridge of the Resolute, silent as space itself. The seat once filled by Chief Engineer Isaac Ward now sat empty. No one touched it. No one joked there anymore. But the engine still hummed, because of him. A life traded for motion. A man given to the fire so others could move forward. Zelthar had witnessed many deaths in war. But none like that. No medals, no parade, just silence and sacrifice. He understood now why the humans fought so hard. They weren't defending territory or pride, they were defending each other. "Commander," came Captain Hayes' voice, breaking his thoughts. She stepped beside him, eyes focused on the void. "We'll be entering the Rinkar drift soon," she said. "It's pirate-controlled space. No safe lanes. No friends." Zelthar nodded. "You should go around. We don't have time. There's a Keltian medical station across the drift. Neutral ground. They agreed to treat our wounded." He stared ahead. "And the pirates? If we're lucky, they'll ignore us." They both knew luck was a poor shield. 2 hours later, luck ran out. The ship shuddered. The bridge lit up red again, not storm red. "Hostile red! Multiple bogeys!" the tactical officer shouted. "Unknown class, no transponders, definitely pirates." Hayes spun into action. "All stations battle ready. Raise shields. Arm forward cannons." But it was already too late. The first blast slammed into the hull like a meteor. Zelthar was thrown sideways, catching himself against a railing. Sparks burst from a console. A crewman screamed as a pipe burst near his station. "They're trying to disable the engines," someone yelled. "Of course they were. Pirates didn't destroy. They boarded." "We've got a breach in engineering," another voice called. "Hulls ruptured. We've lost power to the lower decks." The ship tilted slightly. No gravity failure yet, but close. Everything flickered. Then came the second strike. And the third, Zelthar's instincts kicked in. Not the cold logic of a Karen officer. Not the detached command voice of a distant leader. Something else. Something. "Human!" He bolted toward the weapons deck, his long legs carrying him faster than any crew member could follow. He passed injured humans in the halls, others dragging friends from smoke-filled rooms, shouting orders, ignoring fear. He reached the auxiliary weapons terminal just as a console exploded. A young gunner lay motionless. Zelthar didn't hesitate. He lifted the boy clear with one arm and laid him gently against the wall. He turned to the console. It was familiar, different from Karen designs, but the core principles were the same. He moved with purpose, claws tapping the interface, rerouting power from the damaged port cannons to the ventral turrets. Rerouting power from the damaged port cannons to the ventral turrets. The ship's secondary guns roared to life, spitting bright plasma into the dark. One pirate ship spun out, venting fire. "Who's firing those?" Someone called out. "Deck 7, manual control." "Is that Zelthar?" Back on the bridge, Captain Hayes heard the name and felt her chest tighten. She watched the display. One by one, pirate ships were pushed back, confused, retreating. They hadn't expected a counterattack. They hadn't expected someone willing to fight this hard from the inside. "Get me visuals on Deck 7, she barked. The screen flickered. There he was, the tall, sharp figure of Zelthar, surrounded by flames and smoke, covered in ash, moving like he belonged there, fighting for her ship. The pirates began to pull back, their plan broken. One of them tried a last attack run, charging the Resolute's hull for a suicide ram. On the lower deck, Zelthar saw it through the forward viewport. Too close. Too fast. No time for calculations. No time for orders. He dove to the emergency cannon controls, overriding safety locks with brute strength. The console screamed as he forced it to redirect all remaining energy into the forward plasma launcher. The system overloaded. A burst of white-hot energy shot out, striking the pirate ship mid-charge, tearing it apart in a single blinding explosion. The blast shook the Resolute. Windows cracked. Lights died. Silence returned, and when the smoke cleared, the enemy was gone. Hours passed. Emergency lights bathed the ship in red and gold. Crews moved like ghosts, checking damage, counting the wounded. Captain Hayes walked into the auxiliary weapons bay, stepping over rubble. She found him sitting against a wall, claws burned, armor blackened, breathing slow. He looked up at her. His voice rasped. "I believe I have repaid my stay." She knelt beside him, a faint smile forming. "No," she said. "You've earned your place." The word sat between them like gravity. Place, not guest. Not cargo, not outsider. Crew. Later, as the ship limped toward the neutral station, Zelthar stood once more at the viewing window. Stars shimmered beyond, uncaring and cold. But inside the Resolute, something warm had taken root. He no longer felt like a lone warrior from a forgotten empire. He felt like something greater, something human. The Keltian medical station floated like a lantern in the dark, silver domes tethered by long, glowing rings. A place of peace. No weapons, no wars, just healing. The Resolute docked slowly, her hull scorched, her engines flickering. The station's crew welcomed the humans with quiet hands and wide eyes. Medics rushed aboard. Wounded were carried gently on stretchers. Broken systems were shut down with care, but Zelthar did not go with the others. He stayed behind, standing alone on the Resolute's observation deck, his claws resting on the console, his reflection staring back at him. He was no longer the same commander who had once drifted in deep space, ready to die in silence. Now he was something else, and it was time to speak. He tapped the console, opening the ship's log system. He chose the highest broadcast frequency, one the Karen Empire could not ignore. He began to record. "To the Karen High Command. This is Commander Zelthar, last of the Valiant Spear. I know you assumed I was dead, but I was not." His voice was calm, measured, but not cold. "My ship was lost. My crew was gone. I drifted into the void expecting silence. Instead, I found humans." He paused, remembering Isaac's laughter, Hayes' sharp eyes, Torres humming while patching wires, Rios offering food with greasy fingers. "You taught me that humans were weak, uncivilized, loud. You were wrong." He stepped away from the console, walking toward the large window. Outside, stars spun quietly. Somewhere behind them, Earth burned in blue and green. He had never seen it, but somehow it felt like a second home. I expected them to leave me behind. But they came. I expected them to fear me. They welcomed me. I expected betrayal. I found sacrifice. One of them died so that others could live, not for glory, not for rank, for each other. They have no caste, no noble bloodlines, no empire, but they have something greater. They have choice, and they choose each other. In the background, Hayes entered quietly. She didn't speak. She simply stood by the door, arms folded, watching him. He glanced back at her, then continued. "You believe strength comes from control, from fear, from rule. I once believed this too. But strength, real strength, is choosing to fight for those who cannot fight for themselves." He touched the window. "The humans are not weak. They are terrifying. Because when they stand together, when they believe, nothing stops them. They build homes on frozen rocks. They walk into storms. They face death and smile. They don't run from the dark. They light it." The final lines came softer, but stronger than steel. "So if you hear this and still plan to conquer Earth, if you believe they will kneel, then know this. They will not kneel. They will stand, together, with anyone who dares to join them, even me, a broken alien they should have left behind. And when they stand, they will make the stars remember." He closed the recording. Silence returned. Hayes stepped forward, her voice soft. "You sure you want to send that?" Zelthar looked at her, his dark eyes calm. "They need to know what's coming." She gave a slow nod. "So, what now?" He looked once more at the stars. "Now," he said, "I serve a new crew." Epilogue. Weeks later, the Resolute flew again, repaired, reborn. A patch of Karen plating welded beside human alloy, a symbol of something new. Zelthar wore a modified uniform, not human, not Karen. Something in between. He was no longer a guest. He was crew. A message went viral across outer colonies, downloaded, replayed, discussed in hushed voices and open forums. Not just in Karen space, not just in human sectors, across dozens of species, one voice repeated, They don't run from the dark. They light it. And far away, in boardrooms and war rooms, empires took notice, because someone had told the truth about humans, and now the stars were listening. The stars were listening.